Chris Hassel joined by Danny Kannell and Brady Quinn, who's in the World Cup spirit today with the United States.
Supporting our team, baby. Up 1-0 right now. How about that?
I wish I would have gotten the memo. I would have worn my Team USA scarf.
Exactly.
Sorry, I didn't sell you guys out.
All about you, Brady.
I had the sweatshirt. I thought I'd put it on.
Now Chris and I look anti-American. Appreciate it.
We're not even wearing red, white, and blue. Hey, the Jets. Oh, my goodness. They get beat at the gun by the New England Patriots on a punt return. They managed just 3 points in that game. Zach Wilson has been awful the last few weeks. After the game, he was asked if he felt he let his defense down.
As an offense, though, I mean, when you guys are only able to score 3 points, the defense only lets up 3 points. I mean, do you feel like you let the defense down at all?
No.
Well, he was 9 for 22 for 77 yards. He was sacked 4 times in that game. What do you make of the way he addressed that after the game with a short response?
Look, here's the reality. When you're the starting quarterback of an NFL team, and same thing goes for a head coach, you know, when you have a loss, and that was a pivotal loss in the context of the AFC East. When you look at that division, Danny, if they win that game, they're the top of the AFC East. They lost. Now they're at the bottom of it, and if the playoffs were right now, we talked about this last week, they all 4 have been in the playoffs. Now they're the only one of the 4 that's out of the playoffs. And I think you do have to be accountable for your play and responsible for your play. Whether he believes it or not, if he was a problem, the right answer is clearly he needs to be accountable for the fact that he has not been able to carry this team when he's been asked to in the passing game. And I know the weather conditions were bad, but guess what? That didn't seem to bother Mac Jones, who only had, 4 or 5 incompletions, threw for almost 250 yards. It seemed to be only a problem for Zach Wilson. And the problem, more than anything else, is that they took him number 2 overall. That's probably the only reason why he's still starting right now, to be quite frank and honest, because he's been awful since he's come back, at least statistically speaking, as their starting quarterback. But the reality is, if he doesn't start playing better, it's going to be a really tough decision for the Jets after the season. I think the worst part is they're not even going to be in a position to draft a quarterback to replace him, even if that's not what they wanted to do. Right now, they currently sit as the number 18th pick in the first round. And so that's not going to be even close to what they need to do to get a Bryce Young, a Will Levis, whoever you're talking about in the first round of next year's draft.
I don't ever like to say, hey, from my career as an NFL quarterback, telling Zach Wilson how to do things. But I do feel playing in New York was a unique perspective. It's a unique job that, it's a unique environment, one of the harshest media markets that are out there when it's already tough to win in the NFL. And I was a quarterback for the New York Giants, was starting for them. We went to Tampa. I had a back injury, so I didn't practice all week long and didn't play well. I had 3 interceptions. 1 was a pick 6, played awful. Came in. Could have said, could have made excuses, could have said anything. Our defense played pretty well. I said, I want to take this minute to apologize to our defense. We didn't do our job on the offensive side of the ball. And I think it went a long way with the defenders, with the media. They were like, oh, that's somebody who can stand up and show some accountability. That was the easiest toss-up question to Zach Wilson for him to say, we didn't score 1 touchdown. We put 3 points on the board. Our defense only allowed 3 points. Of course we failed our defense.
Right.
To me, it's a head scratcher how he could blow this off and say no. And I think it's a reason why within that locker room, players are starting to turn on him either off the record or in some cases calling out the offense and just putting their names behind it, like Garrett Wilson was coming in on fire, calling out the offense, saying we were awful today.
Yeah, bottom line is, I played plenty of bad football in the NFL. The reality is, every single time I never put on anyone else.
No.
If there was a pass that I threw to a player out there, even if it hit him right between the numbers, I would walk over to that receiver and I'd say, I'll throw you a better ball next time. Because I never wanted him to lose any confidence whatsoever. And I think that's the thing that stands out to me is, Zach Wilson's obviously not playing confident football, and rightfully so. You can kind of see it. The numbers speak to that. But the fact that he needed to kind of deflect in the way he answered the question is a much bigger issue, too.
Do they stick with him? Should they stick with him?
They have to stick with him. They're tied to him. I mean, the bottom line is they need him
long?
to turn it around for at least the rest of this season. And then you have to really reevaluate come the offseason. But like I said before, unless someone falls to you in the draft, at least based on where they're at now, unless they entirely just fall apart and start losing games, you're not going to be able to go back in the draft and take them. And I think here's the deal. It starts this week because they take on the Chicago Bears. And they're going to be staring at a guy that I think has been – they probably should have taken. I had him higher on my draft board as far as where those quarterbacks were. And I think you also have seen the progress from Justin Fields that you want to see. You hoped you would see from Zach Wilson. And so if they drop next week's game to the Bears, really a game they should win. They're a better roster, a better football team. They should beat the Bears. If they don't and Fields outplays Zach Wilson, you're only going to hear more of the boos, more of the calls, even more so to bench him. But I think you got to give him the rest of the season.
I think they have to give him the rest of the season. What I think is very interesting is what do they do next season, in the offseason? Do they make a move off him? I remember our draft coverage with you, Brady, and we were talking about it being like, why is Zach Wilson such a lock at 2? Why wasn't there more debate for Justin Fields to be taken there? And again, it kind of goes back to the way you carry yourself, where it's been an abject failure on the field and off, so people start looking even deeper. Now you're seeing people bring up the all-22 and looking at wide open passes. They're starting to bring up, our own CBS Sports HQ official Twitter handle brings up Jamarcus Russell's stats through his first 20 games and Zach Wilson's first 20 games, where the QB rating is identical, but Jamarcus Russell actually had a better touchdown to interception ratio. Like, you don't make yourself someone to root for when you point fingers or don't accept the blame, and that makes it harder for you to overcome this adversity that he's going through right now.
I think the biggest thing for him, and you can look back to like a guy like Jameis Winston, where it just didn't work out in Tampa, right? His final year there, threw for over 5,000 yards, threw over 30 touchdown passes, but he threw 30 interceptions. And what was the big issue of him coming out from Florida State? Turning the football over. And it was too much for Tampa. They moved on, and obviously Jameis is still trying to work his way back into that starting role there with the Saints. But that's part of the issue, I think, when you look at Zach Wilson. I mean, for starters, he was a smaller guy, kind of, I don't want to say slight of frame, but he's not the biggest guy. So injury was a concern with the way he runs around, scrambles, and creates time and improvises. And he's been banged up. He's missed some games due to that. You then looked at the fact that, he was thrown in tight windows the last season, but it was a first group of 5 opponents. He could throw the football up really with no risk of his receivers not coming down with it. He played behind an offensive line that gave him all day to throw versus lesser competition. And so you start breaking down maybe some of the inaccuracies, or the fact that if the first read wasn't there, he struggled to work through a progression, or maybe he missed some guys in general, held onto the football too long. All those things are things that you're still seeing right now on tape. And that's the most concerning, is he has not made the progress that you'd hoped he'd make at this point.
There's 3 teams tied for the final 2 wild card spots in the AFC, and the Jets right now would be the odd team out. Do they get there? Do they even have a chance to get there come the last couple weeks of the
season? Make the playoffs?
The way this offense,
the crazy thing is, well, the way their defense is playing, yes, they've got a shot. If they can run the football and then take all the pressure off his shoulders, I think they've got a shot in a lot of games because their defense is that good. But if you bring up their schedule again the rest of the way, the interesting thing is, like, the Bears are playing much better football right now. They've got to go back-to-back weeks on the road. I believe Buffalo's one of them. Then they have to go Minnesota Vikings before that. That's a good football team. That's going to be a rough stretch. And the Lions, you looked at, that's a winnable game. Not anymore. They've ripped off 3 straight. They're playing much better football. And then the Jaguars, more winnable. But you've got to go to Seattle, who's right now tied for the top of the NFC West. And then Miami. I mean, come on. It's a difficult schedule. I thought the second half was going to be much easier the way this Jets team had maybe been building things. But now looking how it pans out, I don't know. It's tough to think that you could say they get more than a couple wins the rest of the way.
And especially consider the competition in the AFC with all these teams, even the Chargers, the Colts are probably out, but I don't think they're going to make it.
You think the Colts are out?
No, I think the Colts are still in it, but I think they're getting better and the Jets are getting worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the exact opposite of what I see this time of year. And like I said, the 2 lesser teams, the Chicago Bears, the Detroit Lions, they're both getting better. They're playing better football. They're more competitive. And I know the Bears didn't win this past week, but it's a tight game. You're seeing the progress you want to see from Justin Fields.
And who are you going to bounce out, too, with the way the Patriots are playing defensively?
And the Patriots own the tiebreaker over them.
Right. And Cincinnati is starting to kick it into gear. The Chargers, as you mentioned, they're sitting there at 5-5
on the road,
right there.
I mean, that's
you got to go all the way back to a divisional opponent to finish. Yeah. That's going to be a meaningful game for Miami, given how tight that division is. It's not like you're resting a bunch of your starters at that point. At least I don't think it's going to come down to that. I think they're going to have to play all the starters that week.
East divisions in both conferences, really, really competitive. Inside the NFL coming up on Tuesday, recapping everything that happened in Week 11 in the NFL and looking ahead to Thanksgiving week and weekend. It's streaming exclusively on Paramount+.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.